December 2016, which we attribute to party activism, increasingly winning public endorsement throughout the country. We are already in the process of registering Congress delegates nominated formally from branches, and we expect to have 1,864 voting delegates at Congress. Our Congress occurs at a critical moment for our country. The SACP is well aware that we carry many responsibilities, with high expectations being vested in our party from a wide array of forces, many of which might not have been historically sympathetic to us. It is no secret that the ANC is now in deep crisis. At the highest national leadership level, it is paralyzed by deep divisions that, for the moment, render it incapable of undertaking the decisive corrective measures that the great majority of ordinary ANC members and supporters now clearly recognize as imperative, beginning with the stepping down of President Zuma. The steep decline in popular support that saw the loss of major metros in local government elections in August last year has continued unabated, with, for instance, a further dramatic decline in the rural Ngutu municipality and other by-elections a week and a half ago. At this rate of decline, the ANC may not retain its electoral majority in 2019, and further organizational fragmentation cannot be ruled out. This is not something we are celebrating, it's something that we are very concerned about as the SACP. Every week, in fact almost every day now, with a barrage of leaked emails and more whistleblowers coming forward to the South African Council of Churches unburdening panel, the sheer scale of corporate capture and of parasitic plundering of public resources by the Gupta network becomes more and more evident. Sadly, and even more concerning, the central role of President Zuma and his son in this auctioning off our national sovereignty is also increasingly apparent. In the political report to the Central Committee, 4 interrelated features of the Gupta parasitic patronage network were identified. Firstly, the accelerated rent seeking based on state capture, with key state-owned corporations, among them Eskom, Transnet, SAA and Denel, and their billions of rands of procurement being the principal target. Secondly, the emergence of a parallel shadow state, what some have described as a silent coup, with key policy and deployment decisions being taken outside of the constitutional structures of government and of the ANC governing party. In this context, the Central Committee called for the immediate reversal of the factionalist axing as an MEC of our Provincial Secretary, Comrade Madoda Sambat. Thirdly, growing authoritarianism and inclinations to presidential diktat, with nostalgia for military-style top-down command and control openly expressed. Dark threats are reportedly uttered in ANC-NEC meetings, and there is a growing pattern of intimidating actions directed at those who dare raise concerns. The illegal role of a paramilitary force linked to elements within the MK Veterans Association is one of the many instances, in particular threats against our second Deputy General Secretary, Comrade Solima Paile. These patterns are repeated often more violently at the grassroots levels, with a surge of political assassinations, notably in KwaZulu-Natal. Fourthly, a diversionary populist ideological platform in the face of growing public exposure of their misdeeds. There have been a number of ideological interventions from the parasitic patronage faction. Private corporate capture of public institutions has included the SABC under the despotic rule of Hlaudi. The Gupta-funded ideological apparatus, the New Age and ANN7, along with social media fake bloggers, and Twitter bots linked to pop-up think tanks so-called like the Black First Land First and the Decolonization Foundation seek to divert the narrative. These diversionary narratives often invoke narrow right-wing Africanist themes and feed into the erosion of the important non-racial values of our constitution and our movement. At the local level, this decline in moral and ideological values is seeing increasing tribal and ethnic-based mobilization. All of this is happening at a time when life for the majority of South Africans, the working class, the rural and urban poor, and middle strata, is becoming more desperate, more insecure. Levels of racialized and gendered poverty, inequality, and unemployment, now standing at 27.7% in the narrow definition, persist and are even worsening. This is happening while a network of parasitic plunderers fly around the world in private jets with known foreign money launderers, or acquire 18 million rands apartments in gold-plated bolt holes in Dubai. We frequently invoke the triple crisis of poverty, inequality and unemployment, but it is necessary to add a fourth and related dimension, the crisis of endemic and particularly gender-based violence. The majority of South Africans no longer enjoy the most basic of citizenship rights, a sense of personal security in their homes and neighborhoods. A pandemic of violence against women and children is particularly heinous. Meanwhile, the trust in the South African police service in many localities is non-existent, while the police themselves are often demoralized, under-resourced and overwhelmed by the scale of challenges confronting them. At the same time, the upper echelons of the criminal justice system, notably the NPA and the Hawks, along with the South African Revenue Services, have been among the first targets of parasitic elite factional capture and perversion for the obvious reasons. However, the Central Committee is saying, let's not lament, let's not despair, but instead we must mobilize, organize and defend our Constitution, our democracy and our national democratic revolution. While it is necessary to clearly identify, to name and shame the perverse and deeply worrying developments within our country, our government, our ANC-led movement, it is even more important not to give way to despair or apathy. Life goes on in our country. Everywhere, South Africans show remarkable resilience. The SACP is convinced that the great majority of South Africans are committed to defending our Constitution and our democracy. Our own SACP convened National Imbizo 2 weekends ago, one among countless broad patriotic initiatives, underlines that the core values of democratic constitutionality are shared across the widest spectrum of South Africans. The declaration from the Imbizo agreed upon a minimum platform of 6 basic demands. The first one is the need for an independent judicial commission of inquiry into state capture to be established immediately and without any further delay. In the light of the barrage of further revelations concerning the Gupta network, the Commission needs clearly to extend its scope beyond the major but still limited issues investigated in the Public Protector's State of Capture report. But we must vigorously guard against recent attempts to dilute it into investigating such a wild field that its work will never be completed. Secondly, the Imbizo agreed on the immediate dissolution of the ESCOM board as part of a broader set of urgent interventions to address state enterprises' corporate governance. Ending abuse and factionalism within the criminal justice system, notably in the Hawks, the NPA and the intelligence services. Fourthly, strengthening Parliament's oversight role. Fifthly, implementing the ANC Alliance resolution on lifestyle audits for senior politicians and civil servants. And sixthly, halting the rollout of a nuclear program that our country neither needs nor can afford. These basic demands, we believe, form the basis for the broadest patriotic unity in action. At the same time, however, we need to ensure that these critical interventions do not simply serve to return us to a supposed business as usual. The defense of constitutionality and democracy is essential but not enough. These historic gains, which we are now under dire threat, must become the platform for radical transformation led by a popular front. We need to ensure that popular mobilization, a radical popular front in the present, serves to address the deep-seated structural problems in our political economy that are at the heart of reproducing crisis levels of poverty, inequality, and unemployment, along with the resulting morbid social phenomena like gender-based violence. What makes the Gupta-centered parasitic network the most dangerous and the most immediate counter-revolutionary threat to our democracy is precisely the fact that it is eroding the two principal weapons in the hands of the popular forces to drive radical transformation. That is a democratic state and a popular movement that was once led by the ANC. This is why the SACP is actively engaging with COSATU and the broader trade union movement, with ANC stalwarts, veterans and supporters, with civic and faith-based formations, with progressive social movements. One way or another, in the coming months, the ANC-led alliance is being and will be reconfigured. Whether there is the internal capacity within the ANC itself to drive this process is uncertain, but that it must happen is obvious. A reconfigured alliance will have to be built on rootedness within working class and poor communities. In the face of chronic violence, for instance, in localities, we need to help communities to act together on a non-partisan basis to reclaim their streets and neighborhoods through street committees and other organs of democratic popular power. Popular power buttressed by democratic state power is the way forward. It is in this broad context that as the SACP will be proceeding to our 14th National Congress in July under the banner Defend, Advance, Deepen the National Democratic Revolution, the vanguard role of the SACP. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let us take questions. We will ask that you just state your name, even if we know you, and the media organization you come from, and then you ask your questions. You'll be number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. We will consolidate all questions and facilitate the process of responses in that manner. And welcome back home.
I've got 3 questions actually. Firstly, on the Independent Judicial Commission, are you saying that the ANC also obviously this week the ANC said they support a judicial commission, but with the president appointing the judge, what is the SACP's stance on that? Do they believe that the president, the fact that he's in the case, that he should be able to appoint the judge? Secondly, you spoke about these leaked emails that everyone's reporting on. The ANC has said that they need to still check the veracity of these emails. Does the SACP believe that the emails are real? And then thirdly, when you speak about the reconfiguring of the alliance, can you just give us a little more on what that means? And are you saying that you don't think the ANC is strong enough to lead that alliance, and maybe one of the other alliance partners should be
during that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Clement Benetega from Eyewitness News. I want to pick it up from the statement. First, I want to ask, are you satisfied with the President's response? You mentioned the Gupta emails. Are you satisfied with his response to these emails? He says it's fabrications, and he hasn't indicated that he would want government to really scrutinize and investigate if they're legit or not, and whether people should face consequences. Because I see also in the statement you're saying you're concerned that him and his son are actually playing the central role in auctioning off our national sovereignty. So are you satisfied with his response? My second question is on you say you're engaging with COSATU and the broader trade, the ANC stalwarts, civil rights organizations, but you don't say what exactly you're engaging on. Please, can you give us something on that? What are you talking about? What is the engagement about? And my last two questions are on the state of capture report. You're saying it must be done and established without delay, but the President says he still needs to follow through his constitutional rights and take it on review. What are you suggesting must happen? Because the President says, I'm not against establishing that commission of inquiry. I just want to review it first. You want it now without delay. What must happen? And the Political Alliance Summit, does it start tomorrow? And what is the SACP going to be pushing for in that meeting? Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we not answer some, please?
Okay, yep, Greg Nicholson from the Daily Maverick.
Okay.
So just to follow up on some of my colleagues' questions. On the Commission of Inquiry that you're pushing for, can you just outline the scope that you'd like to see? Is it a sort of broad Commission of Inquiry into state capture, from outside of the Gupta family, or is it just on the Gupta family? How broad are we talking? What are you pushing for? And secondly, also on the Reconfigured Alliance talks, how would this look? What practically needs to be done, and how would it be done?
Thank you. Yes.
Shanti Abubaker, freelance. Okay, so my first question is with regards to the long-term strategy of the SACP, specifically since there have been calls from a number of quarters suggesting that the SACP should explore the modalities of contesting elections on its own. So there seems to be some examples of the tactics the SACP would like to engage in, such as street committees. But what capacity do you guys have to get that right, and do you think you'll be successful in any way? Are these things that you have tried before? My second question relates to whether there was unanimity in the discussions that led to the resolutions that have come out of the CEC, and related to that what the tenor of the debate was. For example, does it differ in the SACP from the way that NEC discussions are had, where there's rising authoritarianism? And my third question relates to the Gupta leaks and the calls for additional commission of inquiry. Have you spotted a silver bullet in any of the leaks yet? Because I haven't seen anything that could lead to prosecution, in my opinion.
Thank you.
We're answering.
Okay, that's the last question.
I'm Silver Fegeta from Power FM. Picking up from a statement on the issue of the declaration of independence, on this issue of the commission of inquiry, you are saying as much as you want it to be thorough, but it must not be expanded so much that it's going to be rendered incapable of actually going and investigating the issue that the public prosecutor envisaged. I just want to ask you, since the NEC said the commission of inquiry must be expanded to start from 1994, do you think the decision by the NEC is a deliberate attempt to ensure that this inquiry into state capture is actually squashed? Because obviously it could potentially render it incapable of actually coming to a conclusive decision about what is actually unfolding.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's take responses. The mic
Yeah.
will be with you if you can bring it in.
Who will obviously be sharing. I may miss some, and then I'm sure my comrades here will come in. Jennifer, I think that the issue of Genevieve, my apologies. Our view, which we share with the ANC and NEC, is that this commission must be established without any further delay. Now, we did not discuss the modalities of how that can be done in the Central Committee. But possibly, this matter requires direct clarity by the Constitutional Court. That what does one do in the instance where the president who appoints commission is also implicated or is conflicted? That will be one way of shortening this process, rather than going High Court, appeal, Supreme Court of Appeal, and it just goes on and on and on and on. The president has a right, or anybody who is implicated, to take it on judicial review. But on the issue of the commission, the Central Committee is calling for the fact that it must be established as a matter of urgency. The Commission of Inquiry, the view of the Central Committee is that although we must not exclude other forms of state capture, but it mustn't be so wide that it never finishes its work. And the Central Committee is of the view, as we say, the most immediate threat that we are facing is these Gupta-linked parasitic networks. So that will have to be at the center of this. Doesn't mean that other things cannot be touched upon. But we must be careful that its terms of reference are not couched in such a manner that it will investigate all and everything, such that then we don't get to the bottom of the issues. Are emails genuine? Well, it's a bit difficult to answer that, although they do look genuine from some of the responses that we have gotten from some people who have not questioned the authenticity of the emails, but are trying to give us an explanation, of why did they do what they said. No one has come out categorically to say these emails are false. It's very interesting also, we're not seeing any other action being taken against the media that has been reporting about this. So we suppose that there will be processes to establish that, but they do look genuine. That is the view. Reconfiguration of the alliance, there are many dimensions to that. We can just talk about a few. For instance, the SACP has been of the view that the mode of functioning of the alliance since 1994 is now outdated. It's also subjected allies to lots of political abuse, even by factions in the ANC. For instance, we can't all be campaigning in election, but some key decisions are just simply made by one partner in the alliance. But also reconfiguration would include who is best placed now to lead the National Democratic Revolution. As things stand now, the ANC is moribund in terms of leading. What does that mean? Clearly you have to, as we say, we can't just go back to business as usual. The ANC has hopefully got to revitalize itself. If it's unable to revitalize itself, the SACP Central Committee is of the view that we have to explore building a range of popular forces on the ground. But even if the ANC is able to lead, we think it's a good thing to have a whole range of popular forces mobilized, both inside and outside the ANC. This is from the lessons we've learned as the SACP, which we think is in the interest of our democracy. Now, there's lots of implications about the role of the president and his son. It's a matter actually that we've raised this before, even inside the alliance, that this just doesn't look good. We don't want to be judges, hence the necessity of a judicial commission of inquiry to get into this. I might as well combine this with the question, is there a silver bullet? Maybe there will never be a silver bullet, but already, in terms of what is in the public now, even if half of it through these emails is true, It's very serious. In fact, the idea of a silent coup is not far-fetched in terms of what is in there. Well, we're not going to have an alliance summit. We're going to be having what is called an alliance political council, which was supposed to start this afternoon into tomorrow. But the ANC requested that we postpone it because it wants to engage with the process differently. So we are going to be further engaging as allies as to how we move forward on that. But what we want, in alliance discussions, without going into details, is that we want these issues that are facing the country to be confronted head-on. E.g., the toxic role of the Gupta family. It's very toxic, with collaboration from senior echelons of the state and our movement. We want to say, here's an item, how do we deal with this? And not dilly-dally, this thing of talking endlessly. That's what the country needs. We outlined some of the things, for instance, the Judicial Commission of Inquiry. We want that to be put on the table. How is that to be done, and how quickly that can be done? So that is the attitude of the, and that's the space that the Central Committee of the Communist Party is in now, that we can no longer just be fooling around when in fact the country is faced with what potentially is a very serious threat that threatens to take us back. And we don't want to go back, we want to go forward.
No, I think you've also answered Shanti's questions about what was the tenor, by implication.
Yes.
Because I think the rest of us on the platform are happy to agree with everything that you've said and don't have much to add. But one of the questions that Shanti asked, I'm not sure why she did ask, is what was the tenor of our discussion, and what, is it the same as the kind of discussions that go on in the ANC NEC? We can't comment on what goes on in the ANC NEC, including you, who are in the NEC. But what we can say is that consistently since, and it was a point that we made in closing this last Central Committee of the 13th Congress of the SACP, is that this has been an extremely unified Central Committee and a very unified party. And I think the huge increase in numbers is an indication of the fact that large numbers of people, some of them active in the ANC, still active or disappointed with the ANC, are flocking into the South African Communist Party. And I think that's as a result of, one, our considerable unity, and the tenor of our discussions here at the CEC were extremely unifying and confident in a situation, obviously, which is very difficult. We don't want to have swollen heads, and we don't want to overrate our capacities, but we are recognizing, and the feedback we're getting from the ANC caucus in Parliament, from the ANC stalwarts, ANC veterans, who are deeply concerned about the deterioration of the organization for which they fought, which they went to jail, went into exile, this deep deterioration in terms of its moral gravitas, in terms of its political direction and so forth. A lot of them are turning to the Communist Party, faith-based formations, perhaps ironically, although it shouldn't be ironic, because I think that many of our own members are believers and active in churches and other religious formations, are also turning to the party as well, but recognizing that the party has unique possibilities and responsibilities. We are located as ANC members in the executive. Many of our members are key members in the administration of the state. We are in the ANC itself. We're in Parliament, but we're also out there as a unified organization in branches. How many branches, sorry?
Now 7,026.
7,026 ward-based, basically, branches throughout the country.
VD-based.
VD-based, I should say. Voting district-based. So that means that huge responsibilities vest with us. which are not narrowly communist responsibilities. They are about, in the first instance, defending our hard-won democracy and defending our constitution, a patriotic responsibility. That's what we're trying to suggest in the statement. So, interestingly, at our Imbizo of 2 weekends ago, among the delegations that stayed throughout the Imbizo was Business Leadership South Africa, for instance. Now, obviously, there are many differences between us and them, but what unites us is precisely a common concern around the threats to our democracy, to our constitutionality. And we recognize that we've got an important role in that, but we're not alone in defending that. But what we're additionally saying in the statement is that at the same time, while it's important to work with the widest range of forces who are deeply concerned about the defense of the Constitution, the defense of democracy, it's important at the same time not just to be stuck at that level. We've actually also got to organize the working class formations, popular formations, progressive formations as well, so that it's not just a return to business as usual, and therefore the continued reproduction of poverty, inequality, and unemployment. We've also got to defend constitutionality, defend democracy, but drive radical economic and social transformation, not in the perverted form that some are presenting it, but genuinely to transform the structural problems that we've got in our economy.
Is there nothing that points to criminality in the...
Well, I think that, yeah, I mean, that was one. Are there silver? Well, there's, I mean, there's, as Blade correctly says, we shouldn't be looking for a silver bullet. And in fact, we're being sprayed with a machine gun of bullets of all kinds. I mean, but I mean, there are some issues, for instance, which you know, if the emails are authentic, and we don't have the capacity to assess whether they are or not, but everything points to them being authentic. And they confirm a pattern that we've been long speaking about. In any case, they deepen the picture, they add more details. But for instance, one cabinet minister is clearly, if the emails are to be believed, and surely they are, sharing top secret cabinet information with private bodies. Now, that's a criminal offence that carries a jail term. And so at the very least, while we're waiting for a judicial commission of inquiry, which must be set up immediately and so on, there are prosecutable cases which need to be pursued actively and so on. So we don't have to wait for a long process. Where there's been money laundering, if there's any indication of that, smuggling of money out of our country, and many of these emails are pointing to that, the Hawks and the NPA must wake up, must overcome their factionalism, and must drill down and really seriously address what are serious criminal activities. So we're not just waiting for a judicial commission of inquiry to say, move, deal with the rot that is setting in our setting.
Sorry.
Okay, let me open for the last round of questions or follow-ups, and we will thereafter close the press conference. 1, 2, 3, 4. Thank you. Okay. Oh, you want to follow up?
No, just one of my questions in regards to, for example, the
authoritarianism.
What part of the tactical approach is different from what was called for in 2005 to 2000?
All right, and those were the visuals coming through from the SACP media briefing on the last Central Executive Committee meeting. We now take a quick break. We'll be back with more news here on PM News.